The pain struck sharp and sudden, stealing Ivy's breath. She gripped the counter, her vision swimming. Was it exhaustion? Stress? Or something worse? Outside, Christmas lights twinkled, laughter echoed, but inside, Ivy was crumbling. Desperate, she dialed the only people she had left. I need help. Silence. Then a cold reply. We have plans. You're always such a burden. The line went dead. And for the first time, Ivy saw the truth, she was on her own. But not for much longer. The Christmas lights outside flickered against the frosted window, casting a warm, golden glow that did nothing to ease the cold gripping Ivy's body. Pain twisted deep in her abdomen, sharp and merciless. She braced herself against the kitchen counter, knuckles turning white. For weeks, exhaustion had clung to her like a second skin, but this was different. This was something darker, something dangerous. Mommy. A small, sleepy voice broke through the haze of agony. Ivy turned to see Lily standing in the doorway, her tiny figure wrapped in pink pajamas, a stuffed bunny dangling from her hand. The sight of her daughter, so fragile, so innocent, sent a fresh wave of fear crashing over Ivy. Not now. Not tonight. She forced a smile, though the effort nearly broke her. It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy just has a little tummy ache. But the lie unraveled as quickly as it was spun. A sharp, searing pain ripped through her, sending her knees buckling. The last thing she saw before darkness took over was Lily's terrified face. Ivy woke to the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor, and the sterile scent of antiseptic. The hospital room was dimly lit, the cool sheets beneath her a stark contrast to the fire still raging in her abdomen. A doctor stood at the foot of her bed, concern etched deep into his features. You have internal bleeding, Miss Quinn. We need to operate immediately. The words barely registered. Her mind was already racing somewhere else, Lily. She was alone at home. She reached for her phone with trembling fingers, dialing the only people who should have been there for her. The call connected. Her father's voice came through, crisp and impatient. Ivy, what is it? We're about to leave. Her voice was weak, desperate. Dad, I'm in the hospital. I need emergency surgery. Can you please take Lily for the night? A long pause. Then a sigh, heavy with irritation. Ivy, we have plans. Elton John. Front row seats. We bought these tickets months ago. Disbelief slammed into her like a tidal wave. Dad, this is serious. I don't have anyone else. Her mother's voice cut in, sharper than broken glass. We've done enough for you. We raised you, we sacrificed. And what do we get? More of your problems. We're retired, Ivy. We deserve to enjoy our lives. Then her father delivered the final blow. You're always such a burden. Click. The line went dead. Ivy stared at the phone, the weight of their words pressing down on her chest like a crushing boulder. They weren't coming. They never were. A lump rose in her throat, but she swallowed it down. She had no time for tears. A gentle voice pulled her back. Miss Quinn. Ivy looked up to see a nurse, her eyes filled with quiet sympathy. My name's Valerie, she said softly. I overheard your call. I have a friend, Olivia. She's a professional nanny. I can call her for you. For the first time that night, the tight grip of fear loosened, if only slightly. A stranger had shown her more kindness in minutes than her parents had in years. Ivy exhaled shakily and nodded. Please. As Valerie made the call, Ivy did something she should have done years ago. She pulled up her banking app, found the $1,500 monthly transfer to her parents, and cancelled it. Then, with a single message, she severed the last thread tying her to them. "You don't have to worry about my burdens anymore. The money stops now." She set the phone down. When she was wheeled into surgery minutes later, one thought settled deep in her heart. For the first time in her life, she wasn't begging for their love. She was done. The world felt distant, wrapped in a fog of anesthesia and painkillers. The steady beep of the heart monitor was the first thing Ivy registered, followed by the dull, aching throb in her abdomen. The surgery was over. She was alive. A slow breath left her lips as her fingers curled weakly against the hospital sheets. She wasn't sure how long she had been unconscious, but the weight of exhaustion still pressed down on her. Then she heard it, a soft buzz from her phone on the bedside table. And again. And again. With sluggish hands, she reached for it, the screen lighting up with missed calls. 27 missed calls. 17 unread messages. For a fleeting moment, hope flickered in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, her parents had changed their minds. Maybe they had come to check on her, to ask if she was okay, too. Her fingers swiped across the screen. Her father's name appeared first. "What the hell is this, Ivy? You cut us off." Another message followed. "We raised you for nearly 30 years, and this is how you repay us." Her mother's name next. "Do you have any idea what kind of mess you've put us in?" Message after message, all laced with anger, outrage, betrayal. Not a single word about her surgery. Not one question asking if she was okay. Ivy let the phone slip from her fingers, her chest hollowing out with the weight of something she had always known, but never wanted to believe. They never cared about her. Only what she could give them. A shaky breath escaped her lips. "Ms. Quinn." She turned her head slightly to see Valerie standing at the doorway, holding a small pink backpack. "She's okay," the nurse assured her gently. "Lily's with Olivia. She's safe." Relief crashed over Ivy like a tidal wave. She nodded weakly. "Thank you." Meanwhile, Jessica Wilder had heard enough. For years, she had watched her parents dote on her while treating Ivy like an afterthought. She had ignored it, dismissed it, convinced herself that maybe it was just the way things were. But this was different. Ever since Ivy had cut off their money, their parents had been spiraling. Whispers of financial trouble, arguments behind closed doors. And now, with Ivy's phone cut off to them, they were turning their frustration onto Jessica. "Jessica, I need you to understand," her mother pleaded, pacing in the kitchen. "Your sister has completely lost her mind. She doesn't realize how much we've sacrificed for her." Jessica's arms folded tightly across her chest. "You mean the money?" Her father scoffed. "That money was ours. We deserved it. She had no right." "No right." Jessica cut him off, her voice sharpening. "You weren't entitled to her bank account." Her mother's lips pursed. "You don't understand." Jessica's stomach churned. A cold, uneasy feeling had been creeping up on her for days now. The way they avoided eye contact. The way their stories never quite lined up. The way they spoke about Ivy's money as if it had always belonged to them. Something wasn't right. And she was going to find out what. That night, when the house was silent and her parents were asleep, Jessica crept into her father's office. Her hands trembled as she rummaged through drawers, flipping through folders and files. Bills. Bank statements. A life of luxury they had always justified as well earned. Then she saw it. A thick envelope, half buried under a pile of old paperwork. Her father's signature scrawled across the corner. Her breath caught in her throat as she pulled it open. And then her world tilted. A loan. taken out in Ivy's name. A massive, crushing debt. Fake signatures. Falsified documents. Their parents had used Ivy's financial credibility to fuel their lavish lifestyle, without her knowing. Jessica staggered back, bile rising in her throat. The expensive vacations, the endless shopping sprees, the house renovations, it was all built on Ivy's name. And now that the money was gone, the truth was unraveling. She pressed a hand to her mouth, horror flooding every inch of her body. This wasn't just manipulation. This was fraud. The next morning, Ivy woke to a call. Weakly, she answered. "Jess?" Her sister's voice was shaking. "Ivy. We need to talk. Now." The hospital smelled of antiseptic and fading flowers. Ivy sat propped up against the pillows, exhaustion weighing down every limb. Jessica was beside her, fingers twisting anxiously in her lap. The air between them was thick with unspoken words. Then, Jessica inhaled deeply and whispered, "They stole from you, Ivy. Mom and Dad. They took out loans in your name. They faked your signature. They used you to fund their entire life." Ivy's breath hitched. The betrayal wasn't new, but the depth of it, the sheer audacity, made her stomach churn. Jessica reached into her bag and pulled out the documents she had found. Pages filled with Ivy's forged name, numbers so large they blurred together. "They never loved me." Not really. The realization settled like lead in her chest. She had spent years chasing their approval, bending over backward to be enough. And all along, she had just been a bank to them. A lifeline they had drained dry. A sharp knock at the door startled them both. A nurse peeked in. "Miss Quinn, there's a call for you." From a bank. Ivy frowned. A bank. She took the phone with hesitation. "Miss Quinn, my name is David Caldwell, and I'm your late husband's financial advisor. I've been trying to reach you for months. There's something important you need to know." Ivy's heart clenched at the mention of Knox. His name still felt like an open wound, one that time had barely begun to mend. "I'm sorry to call you while you're recovering, but your husband set up a private fund before he passed. It's substantial. He wanted to make sure you and your daughter were secure, no matter what." Ivy's fingers tightened around the phone. A fund. Knox never mentioned. He wanted it to be a surprise. He also made sure your parents had no access to it. He was very clear about that. Tears burned in her eyes. Knox had known. He had seen the truth about her parents long before she was ready to admit it. And even in death, he had protected her. "How much?" she asked hesitantly. David hesitated. "Let's just say, you'll never have to worry about money again." A sob escaped her lips before she could stop it. Relief, grief, gratitude, all crashing into her at once. Jessica gripped her hand. "What is it?" Ivy wiped her tears, a small, trembling smile forming. "Knox took care of us. Even now." 2 months later, Ivy stood in front of a sleek glass building, the winter wind crisp against her skin. The sign above the entrance read, "Lily's Haven, a foundation for single mothers." It had taken weeks of planning, of sleepless nights and endless paperwork. But now, it was real. With Knox's fund, she had created something meaningful, something that would give struggling mothers a chance to build the life they deserved. Unlike her parents, she wouldn't squander the money on luxury or greed. She would use it to lift others up, the way no one had ever lifted her. Lily tugged at her hand, her small voice breaking through Ivy's thoughts. "Mommy, what is this place?" Ivy knelt, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "It's a place for mommies like me. So they don't have to be alone." Lily smiled. "Like a big hug?" A laugh bubbled up in Ivy's chest. Yeah, baby. Like a big hug. She glanced up at the sky, where the sun broke through the clouds, golden and warm. Knox? I did it. The wind whispered around her, as if carrying his voice through time. And for the first time in a long, long while, she felt at peace. The letter arrived on a rainy afternoon, its envelope wrinkled and smudged, as if handled too many times before being sent. Ivy recognized the handwriting instantly, her mother's. She didn't open it right away. Instead, she placed it on the kitchen counter and went about her evening, tucking Lily into bed, answering emails, sipping her tea. But the letter loomed. When she finally slid a finger under the seal and unfolded the pages, her breath caught. Ivy, we lost everything. The house, the cars, everything is gone. We're staying in a small apartment now. It's humiliating. Your father hasn't spoken in days. He barely eats. I don't know what to do anymore. I don't expect you to forgive us. But I need you to know the truth. We took advantage of you. We used you. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Ivy swallowed hard, emotions warring inside her. She had waited her whole life to hear those words. But now that they were here, they felt hollow. Apologies wouldn't erase the years of neglect, the betrayals, the way they had discarded her when she needed them most. She folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer. For now, that was where it would stay. 1 year later. The cafe was quiet, the scent of roasted coffee beans thick in the air. Ivy sat by the window, watching the drizzle outside. She wasn't nervous. Not anymore. When the door opened, her parents hesitated at the entrance before making their way toward her. They looked older, smaller. The arrogance that had once clung to them like expensive perfume was gone. Her mother spoke first. You look good, Ivy. She nodded, keeping her face neutral. Her father cleared his throat. How's Lily? She's wonderful, Ivy replied. She's happy. They shifted uncomfortably. Her mother sighed. I know we don't deserve a second chance. But we want to be in Lily's life. If you'll let us. Ivy studied them carefully, searching for sincerity. If you want to be in Lily's life, you'll have to prove it. With actions, not words. Her voice was steady, unwavering. No more manipulation. No more lies. If you ever make her feel the way you made me feel, I will walk away, and this time, it will be permanent. Her parents nodded, accepting her terms without argument. For the first time, Ivy felt no fear, no guilt. She had spent years trying to earn their love. Now, if they wanted to be part of her world, they would have to earn their place. And for once, she was the one in control. Standing by Lily's bedroom door, Ivy watched as her daughter slept, her small chest rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. A year ago, Ivy would have felt trapped, lost in the endless cycle of trying, failing, and aching for love that would never come. But not anymore. She had spent so much of her life begging for approval, twisting herself into shapes that would never fit. Now, she no longer searched for validation in places that only offered rejection. She was no longer just a daughter trying to be enough. She was a mother, a protector, a guide, a warrior for the little girl who depended on her. And Lily would never grow up feeling like a burden. Stepping back, Ivy pulled the door closed with a quiet click. The past no longer held her captive. She had broken free. And for the first time in her life, she was truly, beautifully, undeniably whole.